My books, The Origin of Names, Words, and Everything in Between, volumes 1 and 2, are available to purchase from most major booksellers in all major formats. Order your copies today so you can enjoy these books for yourself and help support the channel. Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo. Depending on who you are talking to, these four names will conjure up a different image. To those who love art and history, these names will be linked to four of the most prominent artists of the Italian Renaissance, a period of Italian history from the 15th to 16th century that shaped so much of the modern culture and ideas of the Western world. Though to lovers of comic books, cartoons, as well as kids young and old, these four names will be instead linked with the pizza-loving, totally radical Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This franchise, known as TMNT for short, came into being as a comic book in the early 1980s, but has since gone on to become a worldwide phenomenon, with the titular turtles appearing in animated television shows, live-action films, CGI films, video games, and of course, countless toys. According to the Wikipedia list of the highest grossing franchises, TMNT as a whole has generated $15 billion in profits, with $13 billion of that coming from merchandise alone. That's more than the likes of Toy Story and James Bond. This is an unfathomably popular franchise, beloved by many across the world, with the names of these characters known of and shouted about in playgrounds and bedrooms of little kids who most likely have zero knowledge of the artists of the Renaissance. We are so used to the turtles having these names that we can kind of forget just how odd it is that these names have been adopted by an immensely popular brand. So how did the four leading reptiles of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles end up sharing their names with some of the most brilliant minds from one of the most pivotal moments of European history? There's kind of two ways of explaining this one, the real life behind the scenes explanation and the in-universe explanation. The real life story is a better place to start, as to understand the names, we kind of need to understand the origin and creation of the characters and their world themselves. The first TMNT comic book was published in 1984. The characters were created by comic book writers and artists Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who were working for Mirage Studios, a comic book publisher, at the time. It was around this time in the early 1980s that comics were becoming more mature and gritty. Noticeably, at the time, Frank Miller was producing his now legendary Daredevil series for Marvel Comics. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was something of a parody to all of that, it would seem. They were created to kind of make fun of these new, broody comics, and to also remind people that comics could still be silly too. Miller's Daredevil series was a particular inspiration in a few ways, as we shall see. The story goes that one day, Kevin Eastman, after wrapping up their latest issue of Fugitoid, the series they were working on at the time, randomly drew a silly picture of a turtle standing on its hind legs, wearing ninja gear and wielding nunchucks. This was done purely as a silly joke to make the two of them chuckle. Peter Laird liked it so much that he drew one too, with Eastman retaliating by drawing four of them in cool ninja poses together and giving them the silly name of Ninja Turtles. After that, Laird added Teenage Mutant to the name to make it even sillier. From these joke drawings, the idea blossomed into the franchise it is to this day. As mentioned, the whole initial idea was a parody of the gritty comics of the time, and the initial comic was a lot darker, with more mature stories and violence. The comedy came from the juxtaposition of all the dark storylines, with these cartoonish bipedal turtles in ninja outfits. Though, as this series was adapted into cartoons and toys, it became less gritty and more kid-friendly, with all the pizza and cowabungas and so on. But why did Eastman and Laird decide to use the name of Renaissance artists as the names for their turtles? Well, that actually wasn't the initial idea for their names. To start with, Eastman and Laird wanted the turtles to have Japanese names to fit in with the whole ninja thing, but they were not able to decide on four Japanese names for their turtles, so the idea was abandoned. Interestingly enough, there is actually some old concept art of Leonardo that refers to him as Ken, a popular Japanese name, so this art might be a hangover of that initial Japanese names idea. But with Japanese names off the table, Laird instead took inspiration from the names of another language. Supposedly, Laird looked through his copy of Janssen's History of Art and named each turtle after his favourite Renaissance artists. Later down the line, in an interview, Laird spoke about his choice of names for the turtles, saying that it just felt quirky enough to fit the concept. This means that these names are just another part of the joke, to add to the ridiculousness of the turtles in the first place. Like, do you know what's even more silly than cartoonish turtles fighting crime in the gritty streets of NYC? Cartoonish turtles with the names of Renaissance artists fighting crime in the gritty streets of NYC. How they got their names in the TMNT universe itself is a pretty similar story. They were named directly after the artists by their father/teacher, the mutated rat of Splinter, who lives in the sewers of NYC. He found the turtles shortly after they had mutated themselves and raised them to be ninjas in the sewers, naming them after his favourite painters from an old book on the Renaissance he found once upon a time in the sewers. There doesn't seem to be too much of a connection between the artists and the turtles they are named after. Turtle Leonardo is the leader of the group and the oldest brother. He is named after Leonardo da Vinci, the most famous of the bunch, known for his inventions and ideas as well as his paintings. His most famous paintings, however, are of course the Last Supper and the Mona Lisa. Turtle Donatello is the technical whiz of the team and tries to use science to solve the team's troubles, as opposed to fighting. He is named after Donato di Niccolò di Bretto Brandi, known as Donatello for short. He was a sculptor and influenced the other three artists in many ways, with the majority of his work coming before theirs. Interestingly, the turtle of Donatello was initially going to be named Bernini, after Gian Lorenzo Bernini, but as his name didn't end with an O, Donatello was used instead, an argument I don't quite get as Raphael doesn't end with an O either. Speaking of which, Raphael the Turtle is the brawler and main fighter of the group. He is named after Raffaello Sanzio, whose name does actually end with an O. He is seen as the last great master painter of the era. Finally, Michelangelo is the youngest and most carefree of the turtles. He is named after artist Michelangelo di Lodovico Brunotto Simoni, most famous for his statue of David and for painting the roof of the Sistine Chapel. While that's the four main turtles and the artists they are named after, there have actually been a couple of attempts to include a fifth turtle. In the two most noticeable cases, these have been female turtles, the first of those being from the 1997 live-action series, TMNT, The Next Mutation. Her backstory is that she is their sister who got separated from them in the sewers. Her name is Venus de Milo, so she isn't named after a Renaissance artist, but instead named after a piece of Renaissance artwork. The second fifth turtle made her debut in the comics in 2019. She is simply called Janika, which has no links to the Renaissance but was simply her name when she was a human, as she was born human but became a turtle after a blood transfusion with Leonardo to save her life. For the record, I'm not a TMNT fan, nothing against it, I've just never got into it, so all this info is just stuff I'm reading from the internet. If you're a fan, please fill in the blanks for others like me down below, thank you. What I will say, however, is that's kind of a shame that neither of these turtles were instead named after actual female Renaissance artists. As if they were, it could have helped raise knowledge in female Renaissance artists. Like, they could have been named Catalina after Catalina van Hemerson, or Giovanna after Giovanna Garzoni. It's just an idea. Anyway, other names from the world of TMNT aren't inspired by the Renaissance, but have interesting stories anyway. As mentioned, a key inspiration of TMNT was Frank Miller's Daredevil run at the time. Two popular names from TMNT were directly inspired by Miller's Daredevil, for better or worse. Those being the names of Splinter, their rat father, and the Foot Clan, their ninja adversaries. Splinter's name is a homage to Stick. Stick in the Daredevil comics is his sensei and who trained him. Like Matt Murdock, he too is blind, hence his name of Stick, a reference to the stick he uses to fight and interact with the world. Splinter derives from Stick, as a small splinter is something that comes off of a stick, and as Splinter is a small rat, it makes sense. Plus, they are both trainers of their respective heroes. It's a pretty fun way to pay homage to a comic book character. The name Foot Clan, however, is instead a parody of the Hand from Daredevil, with the Hand being the enemy ninjas who are after Daredevil. This is easy to understand. Feet are seen as the opposite of hands. It's another fun and silly homage to that comic book. Other character names come from other inspirations, however. April O'Neil, a key ally of the Turtles, is named after a real person with the same name that Eastman and Laird knew. Bebop and Rocksteady, two other villains of the Turtles, have names deriving from genres of music of all things. Bebop is a kind of jazz, and Rocksteady a type of music from Jamaica. The only really popular TMNT character names I couldn't find the origins of were the names of their two most popular villains, Shredder and Krang. Shredder I guess is just a cool villain name, and Krang sounds alien I suppose. Also, no idea where the name Casey Jones comes from, just a dude name I guess. Finally, it's worth mentioning that here in the UK, for some time, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were not actually called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were instead called the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. This is because at the time, the UK government had strong laws against exposing violence to children, and Ninja was seen as too violent for children, so it got replaced with Heroes instead, a more friendly title for sure. This name change was reflected in the comics, shows, and toys too. Nunchucks especially were seen as too violent for children, so they had to be hidden at all costs, which is difficult as they are Michelangelo's signature weapon. Even a scene in one of the films where he used sausages as nunchucks needed to be edited out in the UK. It seems though that as time went on, these laws were relaxed, and today in the UK, these guys are universally known as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Cowabunga or whatever. This video topic was suggested by Grey Computer over on my Patreon. Every Wednesday I put up a video request post over on my Patreon for my awesome patrons to leave video ideas on. I then pick one of those ideas to be turned into a video the following Wednesday. So if you have a great idea for a Name Explain video and wish to enjoy Name Explain videos ad-free as well as get exclusive content and your name at the end of these videos, then why not support the channel on Patreon? It takes just $1 a month to help the channel in a huge way and gets you all of these amazing benefits. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.